Now that we have improved our movement system, let's go ahead and set the movement speed. So let's close this down, and I'm going to go back to the player in the player base. And inside of here, what I want to do is make a new function. So let's click on the plus up here. Let's write f set movement speed. And for this function, simply what I want to do is I want to take this character movement component and set the max walk speed. So this is simply what I want to do. Now I want to set this max walk speed depending on if the player is running or if the player is walking or if the player is crouching. Now the way we can do this is we can drag from this one and say select. And you can see this one called select. So this is the first time we're using this one. And this one is really, really useful in games or here basically in every game you make in Unreal Engine with blueprints. This lets you select an option depending on what you plug in down here. So let's say, for example, you're plugging in a weapon here, and depending on which weapon you're plugging in, you will have like the shooting speed, or you will have how many bullets you have in that gun, and so on. So very, very useful node to use. In this case, we're going to set the movement speed depending on if we are running, crouching, or walking. So we actually need this movement state again. And let's get the last index, just like before. Remember, the last index is the latest button we have pressed. And let's drag from out here again and say get and get a copy. And let's connect this one. Okay, so now we're getting the latest movement we are pressing on the keyboard. And let's drag from this. Now, instead of before we dragged from this and wrote equal and did it like this. Now, for the select now, we're going simply just to get the last index and see what the player is currently pushing. And we can drag from this and plug it into here. And now you can see the running, walking, and crouching. And the reason you see this is because it's simply taking it from this enumeration that we have written. If you add more stuff to this enumeration, it will also add more options to here, whatever you add into this enumeration. So you can see very useful. Now, whenever you are running, you can have this run speed variable. You can drag it in and plug it into here. Whenever you are walking, you can plug it into here. And whenever you are crouching, we don't really have one yet. So let's just right click this one, promote it to a variable and call it crouch speed. And let's go ahead and compile. Now, for now, I don't really have specific movement numbers. We're going to adjust those later. For example, for the running, you can write 1000. For the walking, you can write 500. And for the crouching, you can write 150. And this is just to test to see if it works. And you can go ahead and make it more organized. All right, so for this one, set movement speed, what I want to do is let's go back to the event graph and let's start with the crouch. So for the crouch, we're doing the crouch here, and then we need to take this set movement speed and set it over here. And also down here, we need to set the movement speed as well. So dragging it here, set the movement speed, because when we're not crouching anymore, again, we need to get the last index and see if it is run, walk, or crouch. We need to do this as well for the walking. And let's again drag the set movement speed, plug it in, and the same thing down here, set movement speed. And now for the running, it doesn't matter because if we remove the walk and the crouch, it will be running here as the last index, and it will go and take the running speed. Okay, let's click on play and test it out and see if everything works. So here I am as the server, I'm running. And actually here for the run, you also need to change it first here in the as default in the character movement component. And for the max walk speed, since I wrote here that the max walk speed would be 1000 by default, let's write 1000 here as well for now. So they are the same. And here for the walk speed, yes, 500, fine. Let's click on play. And again, test it out. Now I'm walking and it's really fast. We're going to adjust this later. And if I click crouch, if I click on shift to walk, you can see everything is working. And if I click crouch and shift at the same time, you see there is a mistake. If I write crouch or press crouch and then press the walk, you can see the movement is still the crouch. And the reason why this is because when you are crouching, you write this one. You have this one crouch. You never uncrouch unless you actually remove the remove your finger from the crouch button. So we actually, when we crouch and we walk at the same time, we are still in this crouch state. So we actually need to uncrouch in order for the movement speed to be correct. So let's go back to the set movement speed and let's actually uncrouch if we are crouching to make it look correct. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this here, and I'm going to extend this here, copy paste it. And what you need to do is you need to drag from this and say equal, and we need to see if it is equal to crouching. So we need to ask, is the player currently crouching or not? And if the player is currently crouching, we need to just write this crouch again here. And if the player is uncrouching, so meaning if the last index is actually walking, even though the player also presses the crouch button, but the last index is walking, the player is currently walking, we need to actually uncrouch and let's connect it. And later on, we can crouch when we remove the walking. So let's connect them here. This is the crouch. And here we uncrouch and we can just go ahead and plug it into here again. So I'm just going to double click and make a reroute node here. And I'm going to plug this one here. And yeah, that looks correct now. So if I crouch, it's going to set the crouch again here. And if I'm not crouching, let's say I'm pressing the walk button the same time as I'm pressing the crouch, it's actually going to uncrouch, and then I'm going to apply this walk speed. However, when I stop walking and I'm still pressing the crouch button, it's simply just going to crouch here. So let's click on play and see. And let's click on shift to walk. Now you can see if I click crouch and I click shift at the same time, you can see the movement speed adjusts correctly. And if I leave the shift again and I crouch, you can see the movement speeds are correcting here and they are working correctly. And if I run, I press shift, I run, I press crouch and then shift, or then first shift and then crouch. You can see it's also working. So our movement speed is working correctly now. And so what we basically did is we made this function set movement speed. And now we're asking if the player is crouching or not. And the reason we do this is if we're not doing it and we're pressing first the crouch button, we're going to apply this crouch function. However, if you're still pressing the crouch button and then press the walk button, it is still having this crouch applied because you never uncrouch. You never let this button go for the crouch. So basically, it would apply the wrong movement, even though we have set the movement for the walk speed as well. So we're just asking here, are we crouching or not? If we are crouching, just continue crouching. If we're not crouching, make sure to uncrouch before you do all of this, because if you don't uncrouch, you're still up here. So we're just making sure that we're applying the correct movement. So now that the movement speed is finished, we can save everything and we can move on to the next lesson.